welcome, dear listener. This is no bullshit gaming podcast to have gamers with an honest interview segment. So we're asking tough questions, but having fun and dropping knowledge with in gaming industry peeps. And today we have Sophie Vo. You are very well known in the industry, but for those who don't know you yet, could we just please start with a very brief introduction, and also like how are you today?
Great. Hi, Machi. Thanks. It's always interesting, even for me, running the podcast this day to be a guest. So it's like I have
Yeah.
to switch my mindset because I'm all still in question mode. Yeah, I'm great. I'm enjoying the summer. Uh, Allowing myself a break. Actually, I can talk
Nice.
about that more.
Okay.
And
Nice.
yeah, and a bit about myself to summarize. I'll try to uh, describe something out of my bio, but yeah, I've been working in the
Okay.
industry for quite some time now, 13, 14 years, still worth mentioning. And production and product management and leadership of studio teams. So worked also in different places, Berlin, Helsinki, Paris. So I've seen also a bit of different culture, different organization. And I would say today, my main focus throughout my journey has been really in building teams, studios, creating a culture, effective culture to, allow, enable creative people to create the best games. So I'm focusing more on the environment than the game itself.
Hmm.
And on the side, which is not a small part now, I've developed a platform called Rise and Play to be really a platform of knowledge sharing for any leaders in the gaming
Hmm.
industry to, first of all, I think, open the conversation around practices of what I call conscious leadership. And I can talk more about
Oh
what I
yeah,
mean.
yeah. I'm super excited to hear more about that.
Yeah, so I have had the masterclass that I put online and intentionally for free to be
Okay.
accessible for as many entrepreneurs and founders as possible. And it evolved into the podcast where also I focus more as well on other leaders and sharing where they share directly their practices. So I've been
Nice.
really supporting the ecosystem, and also I've been a part-time investor as well, related
Nice.
to this mission of helping elevating the whole ecosystem of the gaming industry.
Nice. Okay, so let's start with the masterclass actually because that's really interesting. Well, the giving it for free, it's one part to be accessible, nice, but like why exactly you have created it? And I know you mentioned like who is it for, but what was the first initial idea about like okay, so I need to create the masterclass? Where did it came from?
So I I remember when I was building the new studio at Voodoo, casual
Hmm.
studio. So the way also we were opening studio at Voodoo was very autonomous, independent. Like, okay, you
Hmm.
hired. We
Okay.
expect you to deliver a game next year. Good luck. Start. I was like, oh,
Nice.
okay.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, how do we hire? How do I start? It was a very overwhelming time because my brain was racing all direction.
Hmm.
And as I look for resources, like how to start, should I hire now? Should I focus on the game vision? Then I design a whole framework and process for myself to have structure, focus, and be effective. So I did it for myself at first, and as I went through the whole process and finding out that there was very little materials
Hmm.
online or in gaming to give some sort of a guide to build a brand new studio. I wanted to structure it for myself, document it for myself, so I could teach other uh, people
Hmm.
who would want to build a studio. So at first, it was really not planned to be scalable and just sharing. And as I attended many talks, repeating the same thing over and over
Yeah.
again, I realized, okay, maybe a format that is more scalable is maybe
Hmm.
to create documentation, template, put it online. And I was also highly inspired by, I think Joachim was doing the same with elite game developers
Yep.
for founders, or how do you pitch, for example.
Yep.
And so I decided to try. So it was really trying, and I was also following the masterclass, so the actual masterclass
Okay.
platform.
Yeah.
and it inspired me to a bit the same thinking as with game, like an MVP. Let's try. I released one first module and then a second, and
Mm.
then I got known about it, and I got a lot of feedback from people who were really validating that it was needed, that it didn't have this kind of material. And the reason also why I made it for free, because at first I was asking myself very I would say by default, I
Mhm.
said like, how do I monetize it? And I was, wait a minute, like, why are you doing this?
Yeah, yeah,
Why are
yeah,
you,
yeah.
why are you doing this again? It's like, do you need to monetize? I have a full time job. I have a good salary.
Yeah.
It's not that I was looking to make more money. So I was thinking, what do I really want to achieve here? And when getting to the core where it was, I really want to support other leaders to
Mhm.
build more effectively teams, but also focusing on the right things, people, culture, values. That's what I want to see. So I thought, well, then I need to make it free to make it more
Yeah.
accessible, and then to see really the vision that I saw to happen. So
Nice. Yeah, well, it's a very similar thing happened to me back in days when I was working at Pixel Federation and we were trying to soft launch a game. And I started trying to find any resources out there. I was like, there was just zero. Like, okay, let's try to come up with something. And then all these soft launch frameworks came up as well because
mm-hmm.
it wasn't just there. And I also don't monetize it because why? Just let's just share as much knowledge as possible so others can learn as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it comes we can come back to the podcast as well. And I've seen you're kind of like showcasing a lot of female leaders from the gaming industry, which is amazing, and kudos for that. I love it. Like, what was that the goal from the start, or just somehow evolved?
So the podcast is really an evolution of the masterclass.
Hmm.
So back again to what I wanted to create with Rise and Play was really focusing on leadership practices, and the masterclass started with my own practices. So I was
Mm.
sharing my framework, and when people were asking me when is the next masterclass and so on, and I put a lot of work into it, and also I don't generate knowledge like
Yeah.
this, so I I had to experiment,
Hmm.
practice different things with a team, so I could actually get knowledge out of it. So it was not
Yeah.
scalable as is, and then I felt like if I want to keep the conversation around
Hmm.
leadership practices. There are so many other practices from other people. Maybe there's an overlap with what I shared, maybe there are other ways, but the theme remains the same, where we put the people really at the center of how we think about
Mm.
leading a business and a team.
Mm.
So when I thought of trying to bring speakers in the masterclass to create the content, it didn't sound scalable to me.
Hmm.
And I think the
Yeah.
most natural evolution was podcast, where it's like, what if I could try in a format of 1 hour an episode, but they share really all the insights on a
Hmm.
specific topic. And at the first season, so I approached it very as well with the product management thinking, like MVP first season,
Yeah.
I commit
Okay.
on 6 months, and I look for guests that are all around leadership
Hmm.
practices, have been visible
Okay.
in some way or helping the industry. And at the end of the 6 months, I measured the results. So I checked with myself, how do I enjoy doing it? Do I want to keep doing it?
Hmm.
What people liked? What were the episodes that got the most traction and why? And the thing that was very clear, all the episodes with female speaker were much bigger.
Yeah.
And
Of course.
I
Yeah.
wonder,
Okay.
like, okay, why? It's like, and my audience is, by the way, 50-50. So I don't just have
Nice.
women, but
Yeah.
I have
Okay. Yeah.
when I saw that actually the focus on women was actually maybe a gap to
Hmm.
a film, then I thought, okay, why not focusing as a test my second season only on female speaker and see
Hmm.
what happens. And when I did that, then I had another level of traction where even sponsor came to me and say, okay, well, you are really creating content on leadership and giving visibility,
Yep.
representation of more women in executive roles and how they approach their position.
Nice. Okay. And when you said you measured the first season, like what were the KPIs actually to so
Yeah,
we
that's
are in the gaming industry and the KPI world. So how did you measure that? That's interesting.
yeah, and I get well advised actually from other podcasters. So I asked, for example, Mishka from the
Hmm.
Constructor of Fun
Yeah.
how he was looking at it, and Joachim. And I think Mishka gave me a very good advice, like don't look at numbers, don't look at
Yeah.
numbers
Yeah.
simply
Exactly. Yeah.
from the start. It's like it takes some time to grow and so on, especially on the first year. That's not so important. It's like okay, coming from someone who's like product manager, very business oriented, like, and I didn't understand it at first. Now I understand after a year and like
Mm.
having a slow but steady growth. I think the main important metric for me was how do I feel about
Yeah. Okay.
creating the content, because we do this and you are doing this, I mean, for
Yeah.
free when we start, and why
Exactly.
again are we doing this? So I asked myself what's in it for me as well as I produce this. And I think it gave me even more clarity
Hmm.
of my motivation of pursuing the podcast, where I love to connect with other leaders in the industry. So that was so I would call them anyway and have a
Hmm.
conversation. And
Yeah.
here I just happened to record it. And okay, I invest, of course, my own money in editing it and post production and all the things, and
Yeah.
release it to share it with others. But it's such a small part of actually the real, like, uh, personal reward for me to connect and learn also from others.
Mm.
So since that moment is like everything is a bonus. Like if it grows, it's a bonus. It's not the
Yeah.
goal,
Hmm.
but the numbers are more, I would say, an additional validation that it's going somewhere and I'm getting better at what I'm doing with the podcast. But it's not the ultimate goal because it's not meant to be a business
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
monetize.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because we all also like we are in this space for like 8 months maybe with the 2.5 gamers, and numbers were never a KPI because, well, first of all, we are having fun while doing it, and it was exactly the same motivation, like, hey, so we are talking to each other on a weekly basis and it's kind of fun and we share knowledge, like why we are not actually recording it, because we had this call and then there was one other friend who said that, like, hey guys, like you should actually record. Okay,
Hmm.
well, why not? Let's try that out. And again, it's for us it's growing as well, and it's a very nice feeling that actually it's valuable for others, and that's the main motivation.
Hmm.
Well, okay. In terms of the motivation, I mean, that's a nice segue because I think, well, I assume I've never done any other job than just the UA management, and I've been in the manager position, but being a studio lead, that sounds pretty hard. So how do you approach the people's motivation?
I think redefining first the position, as a studio lead, your focus can be in so many things, right? You can
Mm-hmm.
focus on the game performance, what kind of like being acting like a creative director, also more like people manager. So I think it's important first, like to for me to maybe explain how my personal definition and
Mm.
back to the goals. When we, as a studio lead, you are responsible for the outcome at the end of the
Yeah,
day, right? So you are
shipping
responsible.
shipping the game.
Exactly, and the performance of the game in some way. And when I thought of how to get there and the most effectively, once again, it's through a solid team working well together, having the right people in the right
Mm.
positions, and having clarity of why they are here and what they're supposed to deliver and achieve in short, mid-term, and long term. So how I approached it was really first a team focus, like who is in the team,
Mhm.
who I need, who do I hire, who do I put in which position, or who do I promote as internal lead, framing the vision and mission, where are we going, why. So really defining, crystallizing the direction
Mhm.
and the values, not only the values but behaviors. So values are I would say, the starting point of, okay, what do we stand for as a group?
Mm-hmm.
But behavior is like, how do we behave to each other when we give feedback, when we make decisions, when we plan, how do we test our games, etc. How do we get feedback from players? So all the behaviors kind of set the path of
Mm-hmm.
the process that I'm not defining, but people who are in charge of the process will define according to the values. So that's how we approach it, more on really putting the frame on the why, and to some extent the what,
Mm-hmm.
but not so much on the how, like from the process or the type of games we make or how we
Mm-hmm.
make it, because this is where people have ownership and put really like have accountability as
Mm-hmm.
well of what they do. So those were, I would say, in terms of priority, how I approach the studio. And it gave me a peace of mind as well to not have to think of 100 things at the same
Mm-hmm.
time and
Yeah.
just focus on the things that really have impact at the studio level, which is again through people and team.
Yeah, and since everybody's different, and I've seen that before in my previous jobs, like how do you motivate your team? Because on the whole studio, just to keep working, keep pushing. Do you have any process to like how to find out like who is motivated by what exactly? So obviously, my motivations are slightly different than my
Mhm.
colleague back then.
So it starts really, this thinking starts from the hiring. So, and this is actually fundamental to be aligned, I would say, from the beginning. So this is something I
Mm-hmm.
really pay attention to on during the hiring process. Like, what's your motivation? Where do how do you want to grow? What's interesting for you? And of course, it's not such a direct question because most of the time people are not even aware. But what I ask often is like, how did they move from a job to another? And it
Mm-hmm.
kinds of, I see a pattern. It's like,
Okay.
okay, is the person more motivated by growth, or is the person motivated more by status? Which is again not nothing wrong, right? But
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
there
yeah. It's just a different type of motivation. That's fine.
exactly,
Yeah.
there are different, like others are by the team. So it's like the environment for them didn't work before, and they were searching for a long time this environment they would feel really secure, uh, you know, uh, where they would connect with others. So for me, the environment I imagine that will work well, where the motivations of individual would align. That's exactly this, like having a shared why we're here. And
Mm-hmm.
the focus has always been in our motivation as a group that we love figuring it out how to solve a problem, so falling in love more with the process
Mm-hmm.
rather than the result, right? So it has never been a motivation for us to for the people I hire to become the VP in the next 2-3 years, because I don't even have a promotion ladder like this internally.
Yeah.
So I was
Okay.
very clear from the beginning, if that's what you are looking for, or
Mm-hmm.
managing a team in the next 12 months, I cannot promise that. So
Yeah. Okay.
it may not be a match. So first, I think the match of motivation happens on a hiring level. And then, of course, things change as you have a team, you grow. So it's always being in touch with a team. So I created the leadership system in the studio where I'm myself a studio lead, but there were leads per craft. And we
Mm-hmm.
keep regular one on one with everyone in the studio to stay in touch with how is the work for them, how is it aligned with their motivation individually or as a group, and what can we do. And sometimes we have things of course where we have influence. It's about assigning people on different tasks,
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes they want to grow, is like providing training. Sometimes they have conflicts and it touches their motivation, so how can we not support them by fixing it, but by giving them the tool to fix it for themselves. So there are things that can be solved, and sometimes people change their motivation along the way. And it's also
Yeah.
a natural conversation where you say, look, you don't seem so fulfilled anymore. It is noticeable. And,
Mm-hmm.
I want also to offer you the best environment that is motivating for you. If it doesn't work out anymore, should
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
consider
Okay.
parting ways? And those conversations actually happen as well.
Oh yeah. Of course. Well, it's that's. I mean, nobody wants to have that conversation, but it's super important. So, is it like you are trying to really see the patterns before they actually appear. So, like you said, someone is apparently not so happy anymore. So you try to get to this person and try to discuss like what's going on, and then try to solve the situation, or just like waiting until everything crashes.
So we have different system in place, and again, it's like, so often I say like approaching a team like a product, but this is like so true for me in how my brain works.
Okay.
But for example, using quantitative and qualitative, right? So quantitative is anonymous survey, pulse
Yeah.
survey.
Okay.
You just put it out, same thing. And I would say often I have people quite honest about it when things were
Hmm.
not going well. Although they wouldn't tell me face to face in a one-on-one, they would not hesitate to put something low. And so I see as well when there's discrepancy, but it's a tool to help. And my point is not like, okay, try to pin and find the person who put a lower score, but just
Yeah.
to be
Okay.
aware, okay, there are people who are not aligned. And so when it's I see those signs more on the quantitative level. It's like through the question I understand, is
Hmm.
there misalignment on the mission, or a lack of clarity, a lack of concrete plans?
Hmm.
So something that I can do at my level or with the leads, we try to fix it, to give more visibility or answer some questions. And if it's persisting at an individual level, for example, the person is not feeling like they're growing, or they don't
Hmm.
have the space because they don't have enough influence or power, because
Hmm.
let's say they are not in a lead position, but someone else is, and there's not the space for them to grow. This is something, there are some cues to see it, and it's a matter of practice. I will
Can
share
can
here
you
some.
can you can you share at least like one or two?
Yeah, yeah. So I will share some
Okay.
example that have developed more by practice, right? So
Hmm.
I think one very clear is disengagement of a person. So you barely hear from
Hmm.
them when there's a group conversation. They don't participate,
Hmm.
they don't contribute, so they seem a bit checked out. And that's actually you can spot it even online
Hmm.
through calls.
Yeah.
I have spotted it, and I would say second cue is the opposite. So uh, very very active, but more in the complaining side. So
Hmm. Okay.
pointing out that over problems, but not really wanting to own any
Yeah.
solution, right? So
Yeah.
it's and this is where I see like something is off.
Yeah. Okay.
The person
Yeah.
is very frustrated, and they are maybe not in the place where they, want
Yeah, they
even
want to
to
be. Mm.
think of a solution. Yeah.
Okay. And what about the motivation in, like these days where the market conditions are kind of like uncertain? Like, it's most probably even harder these days, right?
Yeah. So with my team, we were working quite a hard condition. Like we were working also
Mm.
pandemic, but with Voodoo, so it's a very demanding company leadership. The hyper casual cycle.
Hmm.
It
Oh, yeah, of
has
course.
followed us in casual development. So we always like thought of a deadline that was above our
Mm.
head. Um, and something I've been very transparent with the team, and it's also in the context of a job market.
Hmm.
Yes, people can walk out and find a new job with a good salary tomorrow. And
Yeah.
that's not what I'm offering here with the place and the environment that is created. So anywhere you go, it will be tough. And maybe some places offer flexibility. So this is kind of standard, I would say, these days. But what people are really craving for, at least the kind of ones I'm looking for, they really are craving for
Hmm.
connection, that you are being seen, that someone cares about you,
Yeah.
and not like this transactional contract where I pay you
Yeah.
for a job work, and then if you are not happy, you walk out and I find someone else, right? And I think that's another side of a coin, where I would say big job market, like what we call the great resignation. A lot of
Hmm.
people move to places, and the top reason I hear about, it's not so much about the salary or like
Yeah.
lack of flexibility, but also not being in a environment where people really, or the management, the leadership, seems that they care about them, that they can
Yeah.
connect, with others, that their personal life is respected through the work, all those little things that makes at the end of the day the human connection.
Of
I
course.
think
Yeah.
they are really important and overlooked, and that's how you win. When I hear like, how do you win talents? It's like it's pretty straightforward,
Yeah.
but this is takes time. It takes time to build, and it is doesn't give a short term gain. So that's, I think, what is important in the motivation when thinking of people and how do you keep a team together.
Yeah, well, people don't want to be just a number in the Excel sheet.
Mm,
It's just like that's very sad, but that happens, and will happen to me in the past. And I definitely wanted to be appreciated and respected as because I worked my ass off, and
yeah.
nobody cared,
Mm,
which is but sad, and that's it, exactly like what others definitely don't want. And like you mentioned, now these days you can get like a millions offers during the on LinkedIn. We are all getting these, and sometimes it's really interesting to maybe accept them or not. And you made quite a big decision moving from Rovio to Voodoo in Berlin. Well, like, what was your thought process behind it? Because I mean, I can imagine it should could be a super hard, right?
mm. It was a long process, so it just didn't happen
Okay.
overnight. And at Rovio at that time, I was building a new team, going to soft launch with it was Angry Birds Pop 2.
Hmm.
And so it was a whole test for me, like how can I build a team and around a game, and also keep focus on the
Hmm.
product leadership. And I really learned to enjoy the part that was really about team building, hiring, and building this strong creative team that will solve the complex
Hmm.
challenges. So I knew at that time I really wanted to explore um, the position of studio lead,
Hmm.
and I explored those possibility at Rovio, and they were
Hmm.
there, and other companies, and Voodoo also was on the table, so they came to me. I was
Nice.
headhunted, and what was appealing about this venture at the time
Hmm.
was really I always asked myself, like, should I build my own company? It's like
Hmm. Yeah.
once in a while, it's like my but game company. And I talked to a lot of entrepreneurs as well building the company. I have built my own as well out of games, so I know also some reality of it. And um, there's a lot of admin you have to take care of, fundraising,
Yeah.
other things you have to
Takes
do
all
when
the
you have.
time. Takes all
Yeah.
the time you have. Yeah.
And then when I thought, really, what do I want to focus on, and do I want to exit the company or do I want to grow and
Mm.
learn? And that has always been the crossroad question for me. And I was not going for an exit, or I didn't want to build a company to have an exit.
Yeah.
So I decided to go with Voodoo, where I would learn all the experience to start a studio from scratch with some financial security backing with
Mm.
Voodoo, of course, some autonomy, not full autonomy because I cannot make like all the games I want,
Of course. Yeah.
but I could hire the people I wanted and decide how we would work. And so
Mhm.
I thought I would learn a lot, I would grow, and that's the best monetary reward if I
Yeah.
can think of
Yeah.
it. Like, it's like the school of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So it was no brainer for me to go for it because my main driver was really growing to this position. And
Mm.
I can say today, like now, I see beyond the studio is like how can I contribute on an organization level when it comes to thinking about culture, values, and
Mhm.
people.
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned culture and the hiring, especially like multiple times, and even when it comes to motivation. So I know I've seen it a lot. Like you were trying to find a lot of people to the Berlin studio, and I've seen the game designer position up there for almost 2 years. I mean,
Hmm.
of course, it's super hard to find the good people, but when is there any like timeline where you say just okay, so let's just hire anyone because we need those people, or is it just like, yeah, okay, so I will be trying to find the proper people until I find them.
So definitely more the latter, the one of waiting. So the roles that were really long and hard for us to find was technical artist and UX designer, especially for the definition of a UX designer I had. Yeah, senior game designer was a hard one as well for a long time. So again, my thinking has always been like, what uh, long term, and
Yeah.
hiring someone takes a lot of energy and time. Onboarding someone, so like I see like a team dynamic is like a blob, and each time
Mm.
you add someone, it shapes the blob
Yeah.
to a certain place, and then when you have someone offboarding, the blob also changes. So it is a disruption at all the level, and so I thought, okay, if I hire really quickly someone just to
Mm.
match like the task, the role quickly, quick fix, and it doesn't work out, it's going to be very disruptive, and I will spend most of my time managing the onboarding and offboarding of a person, and
Yeah.
actually would
Okay.
take some time away from I don't know, product strategy, studio leadership, or even hiring other talents. So with that thinking, I had this conversation very openly with the team, where sometimes they were like, we really suffer, we really need
Mm.
a technical artist, I really need, and it's like, I explained what I
Yeah.
just explained to you, and I said, I think we should stretch a little bit more until we find
Mm.
someone, we will manage it. We can outsource, I have no problem to find someone to do
Mm.
the work temporarily,
Mm.
but full-time hire, it's a real commitment, and it will pay off by finding the
Mm.
right fit, especially on a cultural level. And I can say, after 3 years of a studio, the ones that were really found for the key roles, like technical artist,
Mm.
senior
Yeah.
UX designer, then they didn't leave, and they were really core people in the team, and they made a big difference. So it was worth the wait and the long search, and also for myself to understand through the process of hiring, having clarity who I wanted and who I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want. You know, it's like dating.
Yeah.
You have a kind of a vague idea of what you want at the beginning, and you try, and then when you are almost at the end, you think, no, this is
Yeah.
not a
It's not.
match.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
it.
and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
you let go, and then you learn something new through the process. Like, actually, this is so important among the criteria
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that now I know how to narrow my search.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's a fair point. If you hire someone very quickly, then he or she can join the team, but then can do a lot of harm and then just leave, and then you need to repeat that process all over again,
Mhm.
which is not time like efficiently used. That's true. All right. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And I know you were kind of like out there giving talks, and then I think you also discussed this with Mishka on the DOF podcast. Like you killed the game, and you were pretty open about it, which is kind of rare sometimes because you kill a game, you do it quietly, and just you want to really move on, move on, so
Yeah.
nobody remembers. So how do you do that, like so everybody is kind of like happy? Because I can imagine, and this happened to me a couple of times, like if you kill a game of someone, he or she can be really frustrated because well it's his or her baby.
Mhm.
So how do you do it properly, or well, without a lot of harm? Actually, that's a great question.
It was a whole process where mm, we discussed many times during the development. So it was Plantopia
Mm-hmm.
during soft launch. If how much we believe in the game, and what would be kind of a borderline gates that we had along the
Mm-hmm.
way. So this question was always like with us, but what I was focusing on is like, let's make it our friend, let's make it our friend, that the question in a healthy way, should we keep working on this game or should we stop, it's not like a failure question, but a healthy question where, what should we be doing to avoid this situation, or should we stop to focus on bigger things? So the team was actually prepared for this conversation, I would say 6 months already before it actually
Mm-hmm.
happened. I was
Okay.
having this conversation very openly, looking at the KPI, and we were thinking like, okay, well, the main thing that worried us at the time was long-term retention, and we didn't see it growing as we wanted. So we were very also critical about our own
Mm-hmm.
metrics, where if we want to be on a hit level, the bar is high, right? So let's be honest with ourselves, and if we work on some features, we need to see a progress, at least on the long-term retention KPI. And those KPI were getting better, but not at the
Yeah.
speed we wanted. And there was also the context of being at Voodoo, where we were accountable to deliver some result in a certain window.
Okay.
And those things didn't match fully, where again, like, the context is important of a game company and the financial, where
Of
maybe in
course.
another company, if you have a payback time of 1-2 years, it would have been fine. But at
Yeah.
Voodoo, it was really on a window of a year, and it was really borderline, which also
Mhm.
revealed to us, like, is it the right game to develop here, where we will have support of a Voodoo machine
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
grow
Mhm. Yeah.
the game. And the more, like, we get, like, closer really to after working almost like 9 months, I think,
Mhm.
in soft launch, where we went through a gate process, and then I was already telling the team before the meeting happened with the stakeholders,
Yeah.
it is tight. It is tight,
Yeah. It's not
and
looking that great.
yeah.
Okay.
And a decision I made as well, instead of giving the power to the leadership to decide for us,
Mhm.
I sat down with my co-lead and also the
Mhm.
senior product manager
Yeah.
on the game, where what is the decision we are like giving during
Mhm.
for this
Yeah.
meeting. And we concluded that we didn't believe that we could make a big difference in I don't know, like, we were given 3 months,
Mhm.
and we knew that it would be hard to do it. And so we said, if really we need to make a drastic change, how is our time better spent in the next six
Mhm.
months And we were leaning more to new projects with all the
Okay.
learnings we got, rather than trying to really make the drastic change at the risk of actually losing all the metrics and the performance
Yeah.
of the game. So it was a very risky move, and we were more recommending to stop it because
Mhm.
we believed that we would have maybe more, I would say, contribution short term. That was the goal by doing new projects. So we owned the decision of killing, and then I also
Mm.
announced to the team
Yeah.
this decision that we will bring to the leadership, and everyone understood the reasoning. Didn't necessarily agree with it, of course, that's normal,
Yeah. Of course.
but they trusted me and Marco a lot. So they knew that
Mm.
we cared about the right things, about us as a team, um, about working on the right game, putting our efforts in the right place. And so, even if it was a tough decision, they trusted my decision. And that was very powerful, actually, for me to come
Mhm.
at a stakeholder meetings. Like, you don't need to make this decision for us. We are making the decision. And then it was funny because the counterpart happened. They were
Mhm.
actually like, are you sure you want to kill? No, no, but maybe you should save. And then we had
Yeah.
all the argument to say we thought about it, and we are set on our decision.
Yeah.
Uh,
Can you share at least like one argument, like what was in your case that people can just imagine, like, okay, so where did you draw a line? Okay, so they tried to convince you or ask like, Are you sure?" And then you said, "I'm sure because I don't know, you can't do it. We already
Yeah,
did
so
some stuff."
the homework we did as well before making a decision was
Mm.
really pushing all the scenarios. So
Mm.
one was we had, I would say, uh, decision we made in the core design and system of the game that didn't were not so thoughtful in terms of scale, of
Mhm.
the complexity of the project. And so we knew we had to address this so the game becomes more accessible. But the big risk was really that we changed so much the nature of the game that it changes the CPI, everything, and
Yeah.
so on.
Okay.
And when we make the production plan as well, so we met some pre-production estimates, we saw that it's minimum a work of 6 months. So
Mm.
making this whole calculation, we saw if we work on new project, we can deliver prototypes put to market already in the first month, because now we have a whole process.
Mhm.
We're very fast. And so when thinking of the ROI, actually, of
Mhm.
future costs and opportunities, it was very clear that the odds for Plantopia to become in the year of 2022 or
Mhm.
2021 would generate revenues quickly is unlikely to happen. So that
Yeah.
was
Okay.
really the factors.
Mhm.
And for them, it was an easier position to take the counterpart and say, well, maybe we can still grow it. So the game was making good revenues and so on,
Mhm.
but could it go to the next level?
Okay.
And this is where, by sharing those numbers, those
Mhm.
estimates we've done, like, they agreed on the decision, right? So it was actually based on uh, data, like it was an informed decision and
Yeah.
not just gut
Okay.
feeling. And
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That, I like those way
Mm.
better than the gut feelings or the emotional driving
Yeah, yeah.
decisions. But it's, the thing is, like you said, maybe for other studio this would be kind of like a good game to grow because, well, other companies, different cash flows, and of course different
Yeah.
expectations. And like I'm hearing a lot all of these like, yeah, well, but Supercell is in the soft launch or was in the soft launch for 1.5 years. Yeah, well, look, so it's Supercell. They have a lot of money on their bank account and they can afford it. If you are in the soft launch for a year and you are not moving anywhere, like, hey, so try,
Mm.
try to think about either a pivot or how actually you can improve the game. So yeah. Okay, so I have this like model situation. I already briefly touched it. So we have a game in the soft launch, and our KPIs are really really close to our goals, but they're just not quite there yet. And we released a new version with our last feature that we had in the product roadmap. The KPI still did not meet the goals, but we're almost there. So what should we do? Any ideas, any pointers, like what should we do? Should we kill the game? Shouldn't we? What should we do?
Yeah, and then what you describe, I think, is probably 80% of the situations of games in
Yeah,
soft
exactly.
launch. Yeah, and it's kind of a hard truth. Is I reflected a lot on this, and if you have something that really takes off, you know that
Mhm.
it takes off, right? So
Yeah,
I think it's about being honest with yourself, also as a team. Like, are you persisting really hard on a wrong direction? And it's human to want to figure out and crack the problem, and sometimes you can,
mhm.
and sometimes you don't understand, and you just have to decide to move on. So a question I ask myself often in any game development or what I do, and also with the team, how should we spend our time? How
Mhm.
should we spend our time?
Yeah,
Are we spending our time in a meaningful way, with impact? And what I look at is growth, right? So are we getting better from iteration to another? And sometimes you can take a step back and
yeah,
a step forward, but I would say giving at least two tries. And if you see it's going nowhere, it's really time to ask yourself, maybe you want to do a first try, but this is the last call, right? So
yeah.
because you can go in circle for forever, and it's leading to
Until
nowhere.
you
Even
run out of money.
yeah, exactly. And I think setting a time. So when you are a small business where your cash flow dictates how
Yeah.
long, how much you can fail with iteration,
Hmm.
and it's much easier to think about this, because you think, how many iteration or how many months do we have? And if we make a decision now with the months we have left, we still have some
Yeah,
time to rebuild. I would rebuild actually more based on the core of what you've built before, so not start from zero. But instead of trying to save, so instead
yeah,
of pivot, sometimes it's just you take the core of the pieces that work and you rebuild something.
yeah. And you're right about like this is 80 to 90% of the conversation I'm having almost all the time with the
Mm.
companies, and it's really hard. I mean, of course, because what if the next iteration is the one that we hit the goals and then we start to grow? But I think like it's never happened. Like it's never the last one. It's always like,
Mm.
oh well, we should try this and that. But yeah, I always say like if you are stagnating or just your KPIs are not moving up or down or not improving for 3 iterations in a row, it's
Yeah,
just like, yeah, that's the time. Like, hey, just stop, think about what you've done, what you have in the pipeline, or what are your next plans, and then just if it's not enough, then just kill it and move on. I mean, it's
yeah,
hard, but like, yeah, how do you want to spend time? You want to just run in circles, or just want to build something that can actually grow? Maybe,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
yeah,
it's very motivating for a team, right? When
yeah.
they want to work on something that matter, right? So um, mm.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So I have like three last questions, but before we go into that, you mentioned at the beginning, just very briefly, like you're taking a break or a time off. Is that I understood correctly? Can you
Y-
elaborate a little bit more on that,
yeah.
if you want?
Yeah, sure, sure. It's not official yet, but I'm happy to share it here in this podcast.
Okay.
So I've been in transition as well in career at the moment where I'm no longer with Voodoo,
Okay.
but I've been also exploring different paths, and I actually share about it in the newsletter I'm
Mm,
starting this month.
nice.
It is an interesting phase because when you force yourself to take a break and not just go with your script, like
Yeah.
what you do, you're good at, and then you take a step back. It's like, okay, where am I in this phase? What do I want to do? Where can I be useful? It's an interesting phase, uncomfortable at first, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm exploring different paths, whether it's with a company, independently, with Rise and
Yep.
Play, and I don't know where it will go, but
Nice.
I'm just embracing the uncertainty,
Yeah,
like
that's
with
perfect.
game development, and settle when there's something as well that feels
Mm.
right.
Yeah, because all the magic happens as soon as you're out of your comfort zone.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's always like that. So I guess, I mean, that's kind of connects to my question, like what keeps you up at night these days? A little bit. You're thinking about
Uh,
those.
I have to say it's something that made me really happy with the like
Hmm.
time off. Like when people ask me like, you must be so happy to have some time off and chill. It's like I've been working hard. I say I don't think I've worked as hard since I can't remember last time.
Yeah.
Although I'm technically free, but I've been a lot on the podcast. I think it's like
Yeah.
one thing I've found like really writing to people that I find really interesting, or I saw some mention about them in some article, success
Mm.
we achieved, and that's what it's the creative thinking, and I think like, oh, it would be great to talk to that person, or oh, I could imagine maybe focusing something that really was a spark out of those creative nights.
Yeah.
I want to do a session, an episode on financial coaching,
Oh, nice.
literacy.
Okay.
So, how do you think about financing, wealth management, assets? What is an asset liability, and giving a financial literacy to the listeners,
Hmm.
because it's very helpful for a business.
Yeah.
If you want to start something, but also helpful if you want to start to be an investor. And I
Hmm.
see it's missing in the space. I want to make it more accessible as well. So I've been very excited about this.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, that sounds super interesting. One last question, and then we have this like rapid quiz, like call a bonus segment. So
Mhm.
what's your favorite book, and why? I took this from Joachim, actually, because it was super interesting, and I love the question. So thank you, Joachim.
So a book I come back often to also check with my leadership practices is the
Hmm.
15 commitments of conscious leadership. And that's what inspired me a lot, actually, with a name of conscious leadership with Rise and Play.
Hmm.
And the offer is really uh, thinking holistically, like as a leader, like be really more human, so connected with your emotions, understand how emotion work, instead of seeing the world that happens to you, it happens by you. So how can you control
Hmm.
more your reaction, your perception, your your actions to the events that happen to you. And so it's also inspired a lot from stoicism, which I have
Hmm.
other books also inspired me here, but that really gave me focus and structure in my approach to leadership and life, I would say, in general, and that's what I try to advocate with Rise and Play.
Nice. Oh, it's. I will share the link in the show notes for that book. All right, so this is kind of like fun at the end, which is a bonus segment, rapid quiz. So I have set of multiple questions, which are super simple. Don't worry.
Hmm.
You have 1 or 2 seconds to answer, and it's just like black or white. What would you choose? And you say black or whatever. So
Hmm.
let's see. Don't worry, it's fine. So it's iOS or Google Play or Android. Well, iOS or
iOS.
Android.
iOS.
All right. Your masterclass or podcast?
Podcast.
Berlin or Helsinki?
Berlin.
Ah, nice. Books or movies?
Ah,
Ah, that's tough one.
movies.
That's tough one.
Movies.
All
Movies.
right, all right. And last question. It's super easy. Would you prefer remote work or on-site?
On site.
Nice. Okay.
So
Well,
it's really the part of the brain, super intuitive. I didn't think about it, but it's the one that I trust for those moments. So
yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
okay
yeah.
with what I answered.
Nice. Okay. Perfect. No, thank you, Sophie. This was actually pretty amazing. I'm glad you were here, and I'm glad that I could talk to you. Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
thanks.
And any where can actually people find you or contact you? Can you share your details?
So my most active channel, I would say, again, I'm about focus, is really LinkedIn, or
Mhm.
then all the materials are on riseandplay.io. So
Okay.
everything, like they can find resources, masterclass, podcast. That's also another way.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Bye
Thank
bye.
you, Mathieu. Thanks a lot for the chat.